Billions operate in automatic mode. They're reacting to circumstances. They're creating chaotic realities without realizing it. And the mechanism is brutally simple. Between waking and sleeping, your consciousness can navigate dimensionally. You enter the scene of your chosen future and you participate in it. Now, using this knowledge to operate on a higher level of reality is really what makes the difference between those who attain their goals and those who don't. They have discovered that they are the projector that shines on the screen. You see, humanity lives sort of trapped in a dimensional prison that it has built for itself. And the key to escape that has always been within the mind of each individual. But it has remained restricted to small circles of practitioners, of people. Now, this is a precise method to create a reality that you desire, and obviously, therefore, that you deserve. You see, the ancient masters, they knew it, and modern science is beginning to rediscover, through quantum physics, amongst others, the understanding that time is as humanity experiences it. There exists a fourth dimension where a past, a present, and a future version of the future which they wish to manifest. Neville Goddard publicly revealed, practiced, and taught very clearly this knowledge in the 20th century. He documented in detail the functioning of this mechanism, and his teachings are compiled in works such as, one of them is Out of This World, which shares practical instructions based on very direct experimentation. Traditional educational and religious institutions have systematically suppressed or ridiculed this knowledge for a simple reason. If the masses were to discover that they possess the literal power to rewrite their destiny through controlled imagination, well, the entire structure of social control would collapse. I mean, after all, how can you maintain populations in a state of dependence and submission when that population discovers that they are in fact conscious operators of their own reality? Impossible. So you see, the fundamental truth that needs to be understood is that no separate God is dictating human destiny, not organized religions called God. The quantum field, the universal consciousness, all of those terms, they point to the same reality, which is an impersonal and perfectly responsive system that reflects back exactly what each individual consciousness projects. It's a cosmic mirror, without its own will, without judgment, and without favorites. It literally projects back what it gets, no judgment. Now, this system was designed, or exists, with an essential characteristic, which is voluntary forgetfulness. Each consciousness, each person, each baby that enters this three-dimensional experience when we're born, temporarily accepts to forget its true divine nature. It's like entering a virtual reality game that's so immersive that the player momentarily forgets that they're playing this veil of amnesia. This veil of amnesia is not a punishment, it's not a flaw. It's what makes the experience genuine. It's what makes the experience free. It'll be meaningful, but here's the paradox that very few people understand. Although we have consciously forgotten our creative nature, the mechanism of creation continues to operate incessantly, 24/7, at every moment through unconscious assumptions, habitual fears, and conditioned mental patterns. Now, each person is literally creating that future reality for themselves. Human suffering does not come from a punitive God or for some, malevolent external forces. No, it comes from the unconscious, chaotic use of this creative power that we all have. Consciousness interacts with the dimensional fabric of reality. And what does it do? It produces concrete experiences in the physical world. Tested and proven techniques allow everyone, to take conscious control of this process and begin to deliberately select which of the infinite possible futures that they wish to experience, regardless of their beliefs. Now, this knowledge operates independently, whether you believe in it or not. Now, the question is, are you ready to assume the radical responsibility of discovering that you, and only you, have always been the sole creator of your reality? Think about it. Because once this knowledge is truly understood and applied, there are no more victims. There are no more victims of fate. There's only unconscious or conscious creators. To understand how to mentally manipulate, or I should say, create the future, it is necessary to first understand the dimensional structure of reality and knowledge that remains hidden, because it completely challenges the common perception of what is possible. Now, the first dimension manifests itself, shows up as a singular point, a state of existence that maintains no relationship with anything beyond itself. It is consciousness in its most primordial state, pure but limited. Now, when a relationship is established between 2 points, the second dimension emerges. And that's when we experience the world through our 5 senses, moving through 3-dimensional space, but remaining enslaved. Very often, we become the victims of our emotions. Understanding of time in this temporal prison where the great deception resides is the 3rd dimension. Now, the 4th dimension, it's not science, fiction, or mathematical abstraction. It is an accessible reality when time ceases to be a straight linear line, and it reveals itself as it truly is, a field where all moments, past, present, and future, exist, all in the same time, simultaneously. Now, just as the 2nd dimension is merely the shadow projected by the 3rd, 3-dimensional reality constitutes only a slice, a cross-section of the 4th dimension. You see, we all possess a mental faculty that's capable of cutting through, of transcending sensory limitations and consciously, with awareness, accessing this higher dimension. Now, this faculty is the creative imagination. It's directed by the will, not empty fantasy or daydreaming. You think and you feel in 4-dimensional terms. Every human being carries 2 radically distinct perspectives of existence. Now, although the majority remains unconscious of this duality, the first is the natural focus that the mind governs exclusively over the physical senses. Now, the ancient texts, they're called carnal. This perspective accepts only what it can see, what it can touch, what it can measure. It's the mind of the natural man, human, who looks at their present circumstances and declares, this is the unchangeable reality. Now, the second perspective is the spiritual focus. The focus that's controlled by conscious imagination, and it's directed by desire. Now, the ancient masters called it the mind of Christ, not for religious connotation, but simply because it represents the state of consciousness, awareness, that recognizes its own creative power. Now, this mind sees through appearances, and it penetrates the veil of the sensory world, and it perceives the infinite possibilities that are simply there awaiting manifestation. Now, the ingrained habit of trusting only the physical senses creates a voluntary blindness. It's sort of like living in a dark cave and holding a flashlight that only illuminates the stone walls, completely ignoring the entrance of the cave, was just bathed in sunlight, and allows you to develop that spiritual vision, the ability to perceive beyond the three-dimensional world. Now, it's necessary to deliberately disentangle the mind from sensory evidence. One must focus attention on invisible states, feeling them internally with such intensity that they acquire all the sharpness and all the texture of the physical reality, concentrated and sustained thought in a particular chosen direction. All humans possess the power to exclude all other sensory impressions. We do. It's not easy, but you train yourself to do it, making them temporarily disappear from consciousness. Now, external reality literally functions as a magical mirror. It possesses no will of its own agenda, reflecting, like I said before, what each consciousness projects onto its surface, like a mirror that can only reflect back what is before it. So the reality responds to what we project. Now, the same principle governs all of creation. Now, this system of perfect reflection is not accidental. It was designed this way because the universal consciousness desires to experience itself through unique perspectives. Your freedom of choice is sacred, and it's inviolable, precisely because without it, there would be no authentic adventure. Only a predetermined script without much meaning or any meaning. Now, this is a new image of themselves, and keeping it alive in the imagination with unshakable conviction. And the universe mirror has no choice but to reorganize itself to reflect this new reality in the three-dimensional world. This reorganization appears as a sequence of synchronistic events, meaningful coincidences, and it's sort of like inexplicable changes in circumstances. But in truth, it's simply the adjustment of the mirror to correspond to your desired future. Now, desire is not a human weakness. It's not a human weakness that you have to overcome. No, it's through spiritual discipline. Desire is the fundamental mechanism through which consciousness moves and creates the mainspring of all action in the universe. Desire is infinitely more powerful in its implications. Look, just observe carefully the desires that truly impel you into action. Your desire captures and maintains your attention. Vague desires sort of float through consciousness daily, but only those that magnetize our sustained attention gain the power to reshape and create that reality. Where there is nothing to gain, no desire arises, and consequently, no action. So squashing personal desire is like trying to make the heart stop pumping blood. It's going against the very nature of existence. The key, or one of the keys to progress and to the realization of the boldest dreams, lies in a radical practice. Immediate obedience to the voice of desire. Not the superficial and the capricious desire, no, but that deep desire that arises from the center of being and refuses to be silenced. When such a desire arises, the appropriate response is not to question its legitimacy or its morality, but to understand that its emergence already indicates the existence of a path, to its realization. Because to truly desire a specific state is equal to already possessing it in the fourth dimension, quantum physics. Now, this is not a metaphorical statement, but it really is a literal description of how the mechanics of creation work. I believe that when we know how something works, it's so much easier to make it work. So desire is the evidence that what is being sought already exists as a real possibility, and it's awaiting our conscious selection. The only question is, will you assume the feeling of already possessing what you desire? And here is where the most revolutionary and misunderstood principle of all mental science comes in. Assuming the feeling of the wish fulfilled, like Neville Goddard said, and living based on that conviction literally alters the future in harmony with your assumption. It's not about pretending or deceiving yourself. It's about recognizing that at the fourth dimensional level, where all possible futures coexist, you are selecting which timeline to experience, which path you want to take to experience it. Through the state of consciousness you maintain in the present moment. Now, the mechanics are precise when you firmly sustain the sensation of being what you desire to be already possessing. You aren't tuning your consciousness to the specific frequency of that reality. The mirror, which is the universe, which, like I said, has no agenda of its own beyond reflecting, must reorganize all the necessary elements to externally manifest what you are maintaining internally. But why does this knowledge remain hidden from the majority of people? Why do billions live and die without ever discovering that they possess this power? Why? Well, the answer lies in the veil of forgetfulness that I talked about in the beginning, that each conscious baby person accepts upon entering this dimension, this life. You and the infinite are literally one, not poetically, not philosophically, but factually. However, to make this earthly adventure genuine, true, you voluntarily forgot your true nature. It's like entering that virtual reality game, so sophisticated that you temporarily believe you are the character in the game, completely forgetting that you are the player. If you maintained full consciousness of being the omnipotent creator of each experience, where would the challenge be? Where would the surprise be? The surprise, the growth, and the journey be? You see, forgetfulness is what allows for authentic adventure. Now, this veil of amnesia explains the central paradox of human existence. When people question how a loving God allows so much suffering, they start from a false premise. There is no separate God allowing or denying experiences. We ourselves, each person's consciousness, are creating our experiences through the unconscious use of the law of being. And the cosmic mirror does not judge whether you are acting wisely or madly. It simply reflects, bounces back to you, acting in a chaotic, fearful, or destructive manner before this mirror results and seeing the reflections of chaos, fear, and destructions. Not because the universe is cruel or punitive, but because it is impartially faithful. It is a perfect system in its simplicity. You receive, we receive exactly what we are being, no more and no less. And the human tragedy is not in the system itself, but in the ignorance of how it works. And like I said, billions operate this powerful creative mechanism completely blind, creating by default instead of by design. So reaping results that seem arbitrary, but are in truth mathematical reflections of their internal states of consciousness. Accessing the fourth dimension and consciously selecting the desired future is not one among many possible techniques. No, it is the fundamental method discovered by everyone who have managed to genuinely master the art of mental creation. Mind creates matter. The first step of success requires surgical clarity. Surgical. To define exactly what you desire, not sort of fluff. Really, absolutely clear. Vague aspirations for happiness or success are useless. I want more money, I want to be happy. Forget it. In this work, the four-dimensional mechanism responds only to very precise instructions. Just as a quantum computer does not process ambiguous commands, you've got to know with absolute specificity which state you wish to occupy, you wish to live, you wish to be. Now, the second step is more subtle, and it needs deeper understanding to mentally construct an event that you would naturally encounter after the realization of your desire, not during, but after. Now, this event must communicate without a shred of doubt that your goal has been achieved with you as an active participant in the scene, not just a mere onlooker or a mere observer. No. You are a real participant. If you desire a specific promotion, don't imagine receiving the news. Instead, imagine a casual conversation weeks later after the promotion happened, and maybe, that promotion is mentioned as a fact. It's done, right? Now, the third step violates all the conventions of modern productivity. The complete immobilization of the physical body and the deliberate induction of a borderline state between waking and sleeping. Really, you're an alpha. Lie down or relax deeply in a chair, close your eyes, allow the physical body to become irrelevant, like you don't feel it anymore. It's just not important. Now, this is not the moment for physical action, not at all. This is your moment for dimensional action. Because in this state of bodily immobility and maximum mental mobility, with attention completely focused on the intended action, you must feel yourself performing it here and now. Not tomorrow, not when the conditions allow, but now. You choose to do it now, and you do it now. You're the master of your mind. The fourth dimension does not recognize linear time. Your vivid imagination and your physical experience possess the same ontological weight. And the critical distinction that separates successful practitioners from eternal failures lies at this point, because you must be inside the scene. You must be inside the scene, experiencing it through your own imaginary eyes, feeling the textures, hearing the sounds, experiencing the emotions as if you were physically present. Experience teaches a counterintuitive lesson. It's more effective to restrict the imaginary action to a single condensed act, repeating it obsessively over and over and over again until it acquires complete sensory density. You feel it, intensely. Trying to imagine a complex narrative disperses the mental energy. A single gesture, shaking the hand, for example, of congratulations, or touching a wedding ring on the finger if you want to get married, or signing, that specific document. When you repeat that in your mind and your imagination with sufficient intensity, it possesses more power of materialization than hours of elaborate daydreaming. There is a particularly powerful technique for those who struggle with detailed visualization, in a relaxed and drowsy state mentally. Repeat a single short phrase, sentence, that implies the realization of that desire. Thank you is especially effective as it carries the presupposition that something has been received. It's done. Now this works with those people who have more assertive minds. The phrase becomes a dimensional mantra, a vibratory key that aligns your consciousness with the desired reality. You feel it. Your energy vibrations are aligned. Now the timing is crucial. If the goal is a deep conscious projection into the four-dimensional world, you must maintain the practice until natural sleep arrives. Don't force your sleep, right? Just let the sleep come organically. And while you maintain, of course, the feeling of your fulfilled desire, that ring on your finger, the contract signed, it is the moment of transition between waking and sleeping that the veil between the dimensions becomes the thinnest. But here is what no modern guru will reveal. This practice requires what most people despise and struggle to develop: sustained mental discipline. Doable, but people don't like doing it. But you can do it. Without it, in an era of instant gratification, you're asked like to plant dimensional seeds and trust in laws that your senses can't verify. You must experience in your imagination, your heart, with all the sharpness of reality, what would be experienced in your flesh upon reaching that goal. Now, maintaining this experience, even when the three-dimensional world, the one we live in, screams, nothing has changed. So the process demands from you like a controlled schizophrenia to live simultaneously in two realities until they merge. Now, during the day, you navigate through the world of appearances, fulfilling your three-dimensional obligations. But in the moments of practice, you completely inhabit the reality where your desire is already an accomplished fact. Now, this is not denial or escapism. It is applied dimensional engineering. And failure in this practice usually comes from these errors: lack of clarity, sort of lack of specificity in the objective, or premature abandonment. You give up, right? When you need to repeat, when the physical senses do not detect immediate change, the universe tests the seriousness of your intention through the apparent time between mental planting and physical harvest. You see, your assumptions function like mental viruses, because once they are implanted in your field, in consciousness, they infect all of the surrounding reality until the external world has got no choice but to conform to them. Now, this is not a poetic analogy. It is the literal description of how mental premises solidify into concrete, tangible facts and feed your mind with a statement assumed to be true, and then observe the phenomenon. The assumption, even when it is completely unreal to the senses, but you persist in it, you repeat it over and over again until it starts to acquire that sort of gut feeling, the visceral feeling of reality. Now, then it begins to exert an invisible but irresistible influence over all of the elements in your world. For an assumption that is firmly held, all of the means that promote its realization become not only possible, but inevitable. And this is proven time and time again. The mechanism is elegant in its brutality. The assumption first influences your own behavior in ways that you don't even consciously perceive. Your gestures change, your tone of voice alters, and your facial sort of micro expressions transmit your assumed reality. Then, like a dimensional domino effect, it begins to influence the behavior of everyone around you, inspiring them to movements, inspiring those people to actions, and probably to words that tend towards, guess what? The fulfillment of your mental goals, your mental premise. People who have never helped you before emerge, offering exactly what you needed. What used to seem like an insurmountable obstacle or, problem dissolves without explanation. Just woof, gone. Impossible coincidences align, with surgical precision. The skeptic calls this luck or confirmation bias, but the initiate recognizes the unmistakable signature of an assumption that is materializing through the dimensional fabric. But here is the implication that few can understand or believe. If all changes occur first in consciousness, well, then there's absolutely no external force determining your destiny, none. The future, although it appears fixed and prepared in every detail, actually possesses multiple possible outcomes, coexisting in the fourth dimension. Now, at every moment, you have before you the choice of which of the various futures you will select through your current state of consciousness. Now, this discovery should be liberating, but for most, or for many at least, it is terrifying, because it means assuming radical responsibility for every aspect of your own experience. There's no more room to blame circumstances or other people or the government or the spouse or who cares what, or the planets or any external force. You are where you are because that is the mathematical reflection of your sustained assumptions. Simple as that. The quantum field, which some prefer to call God, others call the all, or Planck called it the field, possess no agenda of its own. It depends entirely on you to determine what kind of experience you will have. It's a perfect servant. It's not a master. It responds with absolute precision to your sustained mental command. But the command must come from you. Expecting the universe to decide your destiny is like, it's like sitting before a turned off computer and waiting for the computer to write your paper. It's just not going to happen. So the trap into which billions of people fall daily is to look first to the external world for changes. They check their bank account to see if the money has, appeared. They observe their partner's behavior to detect improvements, in their relationship, whatever it might be. And they analyze physical symptoms to confirm their own healing if they've got a diagnosis. This is the operational definition of dimensional insanity. Looking in the reflection for that which must be changed in the object that projects the reflection, before looking for any external evidence. Do you get me? The only relevant question is, who are you being now, right now in this moment? Not who you were yesterday or who you plan to be tomorrow, but who are you being right now? If internally you are someone who is trapped, limited, insecure, doubtful, lacking, the cosmic mirror has no choice but to reflect imprisonment, limitation, and lack. And you can decorate your mental prison with positive thoughts, but it continues to be a prison. Real change in your reality begins when you internally assume the state of being that you have chosen. You chose it, regardless of whatever you're feeling, regardless of sensory evidence. You become mentally rich, while the account remains empty. You assume yourself to be loved by a faithful partner, whether he or she is or isn't. while you sleep alone. And you feel healthy while the physical symptoms persist. This is not denial. It is understanding that internal reality always precedes and determines external reality. The time interval between the internal change and its external manifestation varies, but the sequence is invariable. First comes the alteration in the state of consciousness, and the world reorganizes itself to correspond. Now that is pure and simple cause and effect. Now trying to reverse this order is like planting a seed today, digging it up tomorrow to see if the seed has grown. Of course it hasn't, and you will have killed it probably. Impatience kills more dreams than any external circumstance, and each moment offers a dimensional crossroad. You get to choose to react to what your senses report, right? Might give you something to be angry, but you get to choose of when you want to feel angry and to be consciously selecting which future to manifest. The power has always been and will always be exclusively yours. And that ability to think four-dimensionally, it's not a special talent that's reserved for mystics or people who've done it for ages or geniuses. No. It's an innate faculty that has been deliberately stunted by social conditioning. But it remains completely functional in every human being. I am not talking about theories for intellectual contemplation. I am talking about operational instructions for cutting through, for transcending the prison of linear time. And I'm going to sum this up simply. We, you, I, everyone inhabits a mental universe where consciousness is the only substance and imagination is the only power. Or to use a simpler word, it is the cause. The imagination is the cause. The world that your senses report is the effect, cause and effect. So awakening happens when you get it and you viscerally understand, sort of like aha moment, that only by changing your internal mental activity is it possible to produce lasting external changes. You see, we live in an amazing time of humanity where what used to be the most guarded esoteric knowledge today is freely available. But humanity is more hypnotized than ever by appearances. Millions, billions meditate, affirm, and visualize. But guess what? They continue operating from the fatal premise that they're separate beings trying to attract something from a reluctant external universe. I want you to accept and to understand and to feel it in your gut that you are the universe itself, experiencing itself through a temporary focal point. The urgency of conscious awakening has never been greater, not because some cosmic event is approaching or because the window of opportunity is closing. No, absolutely not. But because each day that you continue to live in ignorance of this power, it's a day in your life that is being created by accident instead of by choice. Your choice. How many undesired futures are being selected at this exact moment by billions around the world who operate in this sort of, automatic mode? The global control system depends precisely on this ignorance. A population that believes it is a victim of circumstances is infinitely easier to govern than one that understands, like I said before, it's the creator of its reality. And this is why true knowledge is ridiculed as magical thinking, while learned helplessness is sold as reality, realism. It's an ancient trick that continues to work perfectly because you're giving your power away. You now know the specific method of precise mental technology, because it is a technology, for consciously navigating the fourth dimension and selecting the future that you choose to experience. The temptation will be to treat it as just, another interesting piece of information to mentally, file away, enjoy the video. Because after all, applying what I've just talked to you about requires something that the modern mind has been trained to avoid: sustained discipline, without external guarantees. There are no guarantees, but you have to keep on believing it's true, that what you want is true, has happened. It requires that you act based on a law that your senses cannot verify until the results manifest. It requires that you maintain the inner vision when the outer world shouts, and tries to prove nothing has changed. Forget it. Continue on your path. Begin tonight, not tomorrow, not when conditions are ideal, tonight. Before you sleep, choose a specific desire that you want to live. Construct the scene that implies its fulfillment. Make it clear. Lie down, close your eyes, and actively participate in that scene until you fall asleep in it. It's like falling asleep in front of the television. Do this with the same seriousness with which you would take a prescribed medication or medicine to save your life. Because in a sense, that's exactly what you are doing. And don't seek external confirmation that it's working in the first days or weeks or maybe even months. The gardener who plants the seed does not dig it up daily to check that progress. And the three-dimensional world will continue presenting its limiting evidence. People will continue confirming their old stories about you. You're this, you're that. Circumstances will probably seem immutable. Now, this is a test. This is the acid test of your ability to maintain that inner vision, regardless of the external noise, regardless of what you're seeing. Each moment offers the same choice: to react to the past, which is crystallized in the senses, or to respond from the future memory that you're creating, that is selected in your imagination. Well, I know which one I want. I want to create my future. The future that you will occupy, guess what? It already exists in the fourth dimension. It is waiting for your conscious selection. Now, the only truly important question in which will you choose? A choice, however, requires more than intellectual understanding. It requires consistent practice. You've got to repeat and repeat and repeat to establish that connection between your individual consciousness and the infinite field of possibilities, because they are infinite. Your transformation begins with a deep understanding of your role as a co-creator of this coming reality. And visualization has proven to be the most direct method for accessing this expanded state of consciousness, where dimensional selection occurs. Good luck. Remember Star Wars? May the power be with you.